Yes, to be here today, to be able to listen to all the wonderful talks, very informative and incredibly fun. Since we are all doing disclosure, and also consider this as my caveat, this is not what I usually do. I wouldn't consider myself as a hardcore player, but I do like tarot reading, and I'm a fan. So I thought it would be very fun to see how these things operate in a gacha game fandom such as Genshin, and that's how I got into this project. So today my focus will be on Genshin's fanfiction community on Chinese social media platform, and I want to start with this. Can you tell who these are? Well, probably not because they're not from the game itself, but what if I say these two are created by some fans who adore the character in the game so much that they created their own original character to pair with them. Can you be able to guess which ones are the ones being fantasized about? Well, yeah. So these fans are active in Chinese-speaking Genshin fandom community, and they call themselves Mengni, literally means dream girl, or girls that are dreaming. And when these creative works are pushed into my page, I start to wonder how much more they can do, because we all know most of the characters in Genshin are very charismatic, but unlike otome game, it doesn't have an explicit romantic route. By the way, if you're interested in, Dr. Bloom actually has a chapter on this that I really enjoyed. Okay. My question is very simple. What happens when players become emotionally attached to the character in a game that structurally will hold romantic reciprocity? And these dream girls, they provide very creative answers. Today, I will look at two trends. One is self-inserted fanfiction, another is tarot reading. But before delving into the case studies themselves, I'll talk a bit about the different kinds of self-insert in Chinese otome fandom. This chart is the vernacular theory circulating in online fandom, and is the chart when you want to explain the very intricate connections between different kinds of positionality and self-placement in otome game, but the concept themselves still work for our case. I made this cross-reference chart based on the diagram, and I focus on OC fans and dream girls precisely because their practices extend beyond the game's narrative framework and involve more personalized constructions of the relational intimacy. Yes, and I'd also like to clarify some concepts that may be unfamiliar to this point. The term dream girl refers to female fans who imagine themselves in an emotional or romantic relationship with a canon character. These fans are self-inserted into a fictional world through a specific narrative framework called 梦社 or dream setting. It's like their own background story, and once they have that, they have a 梦觉, which is basically a dream ascribed version of the character they like. And the fan then perceives the diverse creative output to build and maintain this relationship, and all of this is called 梦创 or dream production. Now, OC fans are slightly different. They also create new characters, but the OCs are usually not standing for the fans themselves. Some say it's their daughters, so they wouldn't insert themselves in their writing. Others are less strict. In both communities, you will often hear terms like 同甘巨佛, which means fans won't interact with others who also like the same character. And a more specific version is 同价巨佛, refusal to share the same spouse, which only applies to romantic contexts. Okay, my method is purely observational. So dream girl community is obviously very niche, so how do they operate at all? For the platform that I'm looking at, long story short, is tied to users' interest. So if you ever liked, commented, or saved things like this, Xiaohongshu will keep pushing those content to you. Another thing I want to mention is that these accounts don't rely on high traffic to be meaningful. It is not about the numbers, but the specific spectatorship that consume this content. Okay, first case, dream girl writing. I choose two exemplar accounts here. This is the info page. We can see that the creator has recently shifted to another game, but she has remained committed to Zhongli for about 3 years. A search on the Genshin tag on the page shows a diverse archive of her creations. And this is like what she created for herself. Her backstory, she's called Jingluo, and you can see she really has everything here. She got the card, her OC, and in different costumes, and even the Genius Invocation TCG. Today I'll do a close reading of one of the fanfic written on December 31st on Zhongli's birthday. Oh my god, he's a Capricorn. The original post was really concise, but very rich, very beautifully written, describing what she drew here, her OC Jingluo lying on Zhongli's piazza, as she laments how wonderful it is for her and Zhongli to be both retired. That's why we know from the game, Zhongli is the oldest of the seven gods. He created the currency, founded the city of Liyue, and ruled for thousands of years, but eventually faked his own death during a public ceremony and steps away from the ruling altogether. After that, he chooses to live as a mortal man in the city, and the Dreamgirl creator starts their story after Zhongli retires. He's no longer a god, so his retirement becomes a romantic opportunity. His long life and history are still part of the story, like in the game, but they are reframed as emotional depth. And here is a manga she drew to show how they finally got together. It picks up after Zhongli has become a human, and it has a very strong sense of we loved each other before, now we're back again. Yeah, I thought this is like really cute. In Dreamgirl fanfic, they also reimprinted the original symbols from the game, like rock and mountains, for arcades. But instead of using them to talk about time or history, the creator uses the geological metaphors to describe their shared emotional past. And I quote from her fanfic, "Our feelings are buried up like layers of sediment. Even after 1,000 years, the imprint you left still hasn't eroded." She also writes about preparing birthday gifts for Zhongli or saving in-game resources to celebrate milestones, which echoed his canon traits like careful planning and honoring promises, but now it's reframed as acts of mutual love. Yeah, and I just want to show how much a girl can do when she's in love with a fictional character. We see the cards here, and this weapon is what she designed for herself in the game, and she also have her own badges along Zhongli's, and we can see she got her anniversary on the map, and yes, and she went to Comic-Cons with her OC, and this is in the corner it's a marriage certificate that she got. Yeah, those are the things that you do for love, obviously. Yes. This is not a singular act. I don't have time for this, but this is another case, and I'm just flashing this to show that this dedication we saw with Zhongli creator isn't an exception, but there's a wider pattern. But rather than this thing every digital husband, I want to shift to talk about my next case, tarot reading. Mengzhan, or dream divination, is a kind of tarot reading for dream girls to speak to their dream character. I wouldn't say it's a popular practice because it sounds superstitious, and for someone to actually believe this is gullible. Plus, theoretically, it could be dangerous because sometimes the person that speaks to you through tarot cards might not be a digital boyfriend, but some real-life ghost, believe it or not. But we still see this in dream girl communities, especially with their lovers of 2D character. These divinations and money transactions operate more often privately, as if they want to be more personalized, and it's usually far less expensive than the regular tarot reading, but that's another topic. Yes. Comparing to the self-inserted fanfic, the tarot divination is far less visual. Usually when you're looking for a tarot reading on a platform like Xiaohongshu, you will have something like this. You will choose a signifier and you'll get your reading, but we have something more straightforward here. You can see the title as the header image, and then the text goes to help push the content to the fellow fans. Engagement is still relatively low, but the platform has a very strong user loyalty. Yes, and we can see some very self-defensive writing here in the info page. Yeah. And here is one of her readings. The reading relies less on the game narrative. It's more straightforward analysis of the character's mentality. Okay. I would say this is much more spiritual. I really want to stress on the spiritual part because believing in a character figure having their own spiritual existence is really like believing in a deity. And the question also framed in a similar vein. Although there is no romantic root in the game, they presume that this character knows the existence of his dream girls, and the tarot writer/reader pull the cards and do the reading. This is an example, like how do Kazuka think of his dream girls. And they got Emperor, Page of Swords reversed, and Chariot. Yeah, I put the cards myself to give a bit more about the content. They're probably less literal, but we can see the Emperor and the Page of Swords and the Chariot here. And here are some keywords that I listed. Here's my translation of some of the reading. The reader actually treats the tarot card as a tool of self-reflection. She encouraged rational thinking, saying things like, the courage he has demonstrated might offer them strength at critical moments, helping them orient themselves and find their own anchor point. This feels very wholesome and for personal growth rather than superstition. And taking this as an example, I also want to point out that the ritual of card pulling parallels the gacha system. The player initiates an action, a randomized process occurs, and the outcome is revealed. Like gacha game, there are also positive and negative cards in tarot. Yet, since the cards are so carefully read and thoughtfully written, the personal traits are so in line with the character. Tarot repurpose randomness as a medium of communication and fulfillment. I would argue this dream girl definition is a counterpart that uses gacha's own logic to produce what gacha withholds. Where gacha grants standardized content, tarot produces personalized, addressed message imagined as uniquely responsive to the individual player. And the tarot permits infinite questioning and an inexhaustible dialogue that extends characters beyond their program limits. And if you can read tarot cards or have friends who can do it for you, it's almost free. Okay, proceeding to my conclusion. These rituals of fun practices definitely provide some reconciliation, but I'm still very reluctant to say it offers an alternative or has any revolutionary potential. It does not disrupt platform capitalism at a structural level, and it's not like the girls are not playing the game anymore. And these practices remain very marginal within the broader fandom and only circulate through small overlapping macro networks. However, by constructing alternative structures of meaning through divination, writing, and interpretive networks, player random autogrammatically closed characters temporarily opened emotional presence. And yeah, that is all. Thank you.
The speaker left a lot of time for questions, so we'll utilize them. I'm going to start here, then there.
Okay, thank you for your wonderful presentation. So one thing about this dream, like Yume or Mom, that I noticed is that like most of the dream OCs tend to be like hyper feminine,
yes,
like very girly, like even the examples that you showed in the presentation.
Yes.
And the relationship with those OCs and the existing characters, they also tend to be like very heteronormative, which I think is like what causes even other female fans to like consider it like kind of cringe, and like that's why it's kind of marginalized. So yeah, what do you think this culture says about women's desire and how they're expressed in the context of gacha games and trying to make their OCs like this?
I would say, like, you don't have to be a perfect feminist to do these original works. Those girls are, I think there is still a heterosexual normativity within because they're having their like marriage certificates. Yeah, it's my observation, but I think That's why they're so niche. You're right about that. And that's also my concern, to be honest. Thank you for the question. I found it's really informative. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Thank you for the interesting talk. And I just have a short question because in your presentation you have only covered the case on Xiaohongshu, and I would like to know that how is this dream girl phenomenon cultivated and influenced by the environments on this social platform, such as how the people, the users on this platform view romance and femininity, and because your cases are mainly Xiaohongshu focused, just want to know if this phenomenon also exists in other kinds of platforms, and if yes, is the cases on Xiaohongshu different to those cases? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. I haven't looked much into that, but if you look into like L3, it's basically smut, and more for Xiaohongshu per se, I think it's more like aesthetic, and it has the image plus the fanfic, so that's kind of unique ecology for this platform. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for a lovely presentation. I want to first start by commenting, if I may, that you said tarot reading for the characters is random. Because I'm sure if you ask the people who did the tarot readings, they will probably not like that, because they imagine on some level that, the tarot really represents the characters speaking to them. But I think that's kind of part of the broader point that I think your presentation helped me realize. This is basically people's efforts to legitimize a romantic relationship in a game where romance is implied but not directly talked about.
Yes.
And I think for me, one of the implications I'd like your opinion on, if I may, is I want to kind of talk about the gender differences, if you will. We asked about heteronormative couples, but also, I guess, from a male perspective, all this behaviors of idolizing characters, calling them their waifu in Western social media, anniversaries, etc., etc. Some people even marrying them. It happens a lot in males as well. So I don't know. I would be curious on your thoughts of if there is a gender split, or the differences in which males also demonstrate these
I feel
emotions.
like it's dangerous to say it's gendered, because I might fall into the essentialist perspective. So I don't know. There's definitely the culture there. Yes, and I think from my observation, these girls, they are much more patient and much more creative. But that's my observation. Thank you.
No, sorry, over there first.
Oh.
So over there.
Wow.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
So there are some observations that I would also like to point out as well, if I may.
Okay.
So first of all, regarding sample selection, I
Yes.
noticed that this is predominantly based on Xiaohongshu, which I, from observation, recall that it tends to reflect more of the female community of that side of the community.
Yeah.
However, I think for a more balanced distribution, I think it's the other extreme, but Tieba and also would also, I understand the reactions, but it also serves as a mirror image of the same thing. And second of all, I would like to comment on my perhaps observations on this kind of dream girl behavior.
Yes.
So that a lot of the times it's rarely very self-contained. So I think in Chinese there is a word for it called 圈地自萌.
Yes.
But I think it's rarely actually practiced in real life, and that's why there might be some sort of reaction or not very good reception of such behavior when they're acting outside of their perhaps inner circles.
Yes.
In that, it tends to offend people when, for example, someone's pairing of a character doesn't match others' pairings of that character. So those are just my 2 cents. I would love to hear your opinion on it. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I totally agree. I'll look into Tieba and see what they can offer. Thank you for that. And about not being, I think my case, they focus more on the creativity part than like having random fights with people online. And the circle is, yes. I have an observation that I didn't include is why you don't want to be a dream girl, because there are all the other like CB fandom, and there's a term called 骂不文. It's like you write really bad, like smart for your rivalry, and I think they also are aware of the situation. So yeah, but I agree with your observation. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Mabu, and it's a great way to end this talk. Round of applause, please.